Hi and welcome to part 10 of this video series. Today we're going to make a puzzle bolt to create credit notes and also fix a few buttons, show unpaid and paid invoices and a few other small things. So the first task is to make the puzzle bolt to create credit notes. To do that we need to do some changes to the invoice model. So if I just go into Invoicely, apps and invoice and into the models.py for the invoices. Here I want one more field to check if the invoice has been credited. So then I can just say is credited equals models.boolean field, default equals false, and then I need to stop the server down here and say python manage.py make migrations and python manage.py migrate. Great, so now the new field is added to the database. And to make use of this and this in the front end, I need to use them in the serializers.py. So if I just go in here and find invoice serializers, then I go to the bottom of this list and append both of them there. Is credit for and is credited. And save. And that's it for the backend. Next I want to create a button in the front end. On the invoice page I want a button for create credit note. So if I go into views, dashboard and invoice.view, and then below this set as paid I can create one more button at click. So when I click this button I want to call create credit note. Credit note. Class button is danger because it's not always a credit note you want to create. So, and we also want to show this only if the invoice hasn't already been paid. So I can copy that from this line and create credit note button. Great. So now we have the button and the next step is to create this function. So I just copy the name of it, scroll down into the methods list here, and at the bottom below this set as paid I can create one more sync, create credit note, and the first thing I need to do here is to say that this.invoice.isCredited equals true. So we set the invoice we are on to credited, and then I want to do similar as I did up here and to copy this and then remove the items from the list, and then I can actually just copy this, both of these, paste them down here. So I just patch it just like we do up here when we set this as paid, but here we set this to is credited. And we call the toast and we show the error in the console if there are any. By the way, I don't need this line here. But when we are finished with this, which is converting, I want to create a new invoice. And to do that, I first create a new variable, let credit note equals this.invoice. So we make a copy of this variable or this object. And we say credit note dot is credit for equals this.invoice.id. So we set this field in the here, this foreign key. We set this to the invoice we are on, and then we also say credit note.isCredited equals true. No, false, because the one you are on is the one who is credited, of course, this one. And when that's done, I want to delete the ID from the invoice we have here. And then I say delete credit note ID. So we remove the ID field from the credit note we are going to send into the backend. Await axios.post API/v1 invoices, just like when we are creating a new invoice, and then we pass in the credit note, And when that's done, say .then response that arrow function. You can copy the toast from up here like that. And then I want to say the credit note was created. Great. And when that's done, I want to say this.router.push. I want to send the user back to the invoices page. Dashboard/invoices. And if there are any errors, I can just copy this, paste it there, and save. So hopefully there are no view errors as I can see yet, and I can run the server. If I now go back to here, refresh. Great, so if I now go into one of these, we will have a new button here, create credit note. Just want to open up the console to see if we get any errors there. When I click this, okay, I got an error from the backend. Okay, the patch did not work and the post did not work. Okay, so the reason that I got the error is because when we create this new credit note, it's not connected to the items. So if I just scroll up, copy this line, which I was not supposed to remove, paste it in here again and save. And now refresh, try to click create credit note, I'm refreshed on send back here, and I got a new invoice up here. And if I go into it, this should be a credit note. I can go to the backend and check this. Here, this is set to invoice type. That is not correct. Okay, so I think if I go into the code again, here say credit note dot invoice type equals credit note and save, because I think all of the other fields was correct, because this links to the other invoice and similar. So let me just go back again and into this, create credit note. Okay, seems a little bit more correct. As you can see here, it still says invoice type invoice, but here it says credit note. Perfect. So there's probably something wrong here. If I go into invoice.view, find this part in the template, get invoice type. This is supposed to have underscore. So now it says credit note. Perfect. So now it's possible to create credit notes in the system. So then I can go back to the to-do list and set this task to done. Next step now is to make it possible to get the credit note as a PDF, because if I go here and set download PDF, you will say that this as invoice, this needs to say credit note and similar. And some of these has to be minus and not the values that you can see here. So just close this. And if I find the template PDF, just copy all of it, create a new file, save it as PDF underscore credit note.html. Scroll to the top, change the title to credit note, and the styling is the same as it was. And if I just found there it says invoice, you need to change this to credit note. And the email can be as it was, the invoice date can also be as it was, but we're not supposed to have a due date here. But here we can say credit note 4, so we see the ID for the other invoice, or the invoice number. So invoice dot is invoice 4 dot invoice number. So it's easy to find the other one. You can still see the sender reference and our reference. Perfect. And the table here can be as it was. It's just that instead of saying quantity like this, we need to say minus quantity. And the gross amount should also be minus. And if I just scroll down to the summary, the invoice number can be as it was, this line can be removed, this line can be removed, and the net amount needs to be set to minus, the VAT amount needs to be set to minus, and also the invoice gross amount minus. And it shouldn't say amount to pay, but credit, like that. And then I need to change the function which is generating this. Here I need to create a new variable called template name equals, remove that from there, copy, replace, and then we can say if invoice.is credit for template name equals PDF credit note.html. So if the value is set in this, you can use this template name instead when we are generating the template. Great, so then I can save. If I now refresh, click the download PDF button, go into it, you say credit note 3, only the invoice number. Okay, there's a little mistake there in the credit note 4. That's there, I forgot to close it. Okay, but the rest is still correct. We have the minus and credit. Perfect. I can close that again, go back to the to-do list and set this task to done. Next, I want to fix the button if we are on a credit note on the invoice page, because if the invoice is a credit note, I don't want to show these two buttons, the set as paid and credit and create credit note. So here I can say template v-if, so you use view to check if this invoice is credit for. That has to be empty, and not invoice dot is credited. And if both of these are false, then we can show these buttons. Close the template and save. So now the buttons isn't showing on this invoice because it is a credit note. And if I go into this, for example, okay, this is paid, but if I go there, this says set as paid and also create credit note. Perfect. So then I can set this task as well to done. And then I want to show unpaid and also paid invoices on the client page. Before I continue, I just want to say thanks to my Patreons. If you too want to support me, you will find a link to my Patreon in the description below. So if I go into one of the clients, this one for example, I want to show a list of the invoices here. And to do that, I need to create a new serializers for the client. So if I go back to the client and into serializers.py, I want it to be located here. Then I need to import the invoice model from apps.invoice.models. Import invoice. And then the top here is a class client invoice serializer. Patient serializer.model serializer. Then we can set the class meta. This can be set to model equals invoice. And also the fields I want to use, which is a tuple. I want the ID. And I want the invoice number. And I want the is sent. I want is paid. I want the gross amount, comma, and I want the what amount, and I want the net amount, and I want to get due date formatted, and invoice type, and also is credited. Save. So if I then go down to this client serializers, at the top I can say invoices equals client invoice serializers. So I use this to get the invoices. Many equals true. And then I need to append this to the list at the bottom here. So now I get the invoices connected to this client in the front end with this data. So then I can find client.view. And first I want to create a new list in here, invoices, just so things don't crash before we get the data from the server. And then I want to create two computed values, which is something that comes from view. So computed. And I want one variable or list for unpaid invoices. Return this.client.invoices.filter. Create a new variable invoice. Fat arrow invoice.isPaid equals false. So this will give me a list of invoices where the invoice.isPaid is set to false. And every time this updates, this variable will also change because it is a computed value. Then I can make a copy of this, just rename it to paid invoices, and instead of false, I set true, and save. And then we can create the HTML for this. So if I scroll up, I can copy this column name below there, div class box, and before I forget it, only want to show this if we have any unpaid invoices. So v if unpaid invoices.length. So this will only be rendered if we have any invoices like that. h2 class subtitle unpaid invoices. Close it. Close this. Close this. Save and go back and see. Yes, we have some unpaid invoices connected to this client. And in here I want to create a table. So below the title, table class table is full width. So it fills out the whole screen. Just close that. And then in the table I want a T head with TR. And then I want to show the ID or invoice number, the amount, the due date, and also some actions. And then I say T body. Close it. And TR, and here I want to loop through all of the invoices in the unpaid invoices list. So V4 invoice in unpaid invoices. We bind key, so each of the TRs is unique for view invoice.id. Close it like that. And first I show invoice.invoice number. And then invoice.gross amount, and then invoice.get due date formatted. And in the last one I want to show a link so you can go and see the details of this invoice. So here's a router link, :2, so we bind the value to this code, name, :invoice, which is the route name, params id invoice.id. I will close this and that details and close the router link and save. So if I go back now, you will see 4 unpaid invoices connected to this client. And then I can do the same for the paid invoices. If I just copy this, paste it, replace the title with paid invoices, like that. And I also want to loop through this like that and save. and the contents of the table is the same. So if I refresh now, I have one paid invoice for this client. Perfect. So that means that I now can go back to the to-do list again. I set this task to done. Next step now is to make it possible to send reminders to the clients. So if they are past the due date, you can just click a button and they will get a new email with the invoice and information that they have to pay now. And I'm not going to implement a SMTP server or anything like that, so I'm just going to fake a simple backend so we can see that emails are sent, which is easy for testing. So if I go to Invoicely and into settings.py, I can set the email backend like this to django.core.mail backends.console.email backend. So when I send the email, I will just see the output of it here in the console. And then we need a new view for this. So inside invoice views.py, at the bottom here, first I can import the function from Django for sending emails. From django.core.mail import email multi alternatives, because we're going to pass in and send the PDF as well to the user. Then I can copy this, because we're just going to use a simple view like this. And we're going to require the token and that the user is authenticated. Def send reminder request and invoice ID, so we know which invoice to send it to. Invoice equals get object 404, because you need to get this from the database, just like we did up here. So I can copy this and paste it like that. And I can also get the theme, just so we can check some things afterwards. Paste it like that. And then I set the subject for the email. I set the from email, which is connected to the theme, and then the email field on the theme. And 2 is set to the client, which is connected to the invoice, and then the email field for that client. And the text content for this email will just be you have an unpaid invoice and then the invoice number. And the same with the HTML content, it will be very similar. You could use a template here if you wanted, and you just do something like this. We get the template and render it and send the HTML instead of this. But for now this will do. And then we create a new message and use the function we imported at the top. Pass in the subject, the text content, and the from email and who it's going to. And then to pass in the HTML, we say msg.attach alternative and the HTML content, which is this one, and set it to text/HTML. Then we create the template and use the function getTemplate, just like we did up here when we generate the PDF. And then we get the HTML by using the render function, pass in the invoice and the theme from up here. And then we generate the PDF by using PDFKit from string, pass in the HTML and use no options. And then we check if the PDF is generated by saying if PDF. Then we set the name to invoice underscore and then just show the invoice number.pdf. And then we attach the PDF, set the name and set the content to application/PDF. And after that we just say msg.send. So then we send the message and return just an empty response. And save. And then we need to import this to the URLs so we can access it from the front end. Paste it in at the end there. Copy all of this. Replace generate PDF with send reminder view and set the name to that. Great. So now we need to create a button on the invoice.view page so we can click that to send a reminder. So if we go back and find invoice.view, can begin with the function. If I scroll to the bottom here, at the end of methods, I say send reminder, Axios. We use the get and go to this address, which is just set up here, /send reminder. And when that's done, we get a response like usually, show a toast, the reminder was set, and then we just show the error in the console if there are any. So then we can save, and we can scroll up inside the other buttons here. At the bottom here, we can say button at click, send reminder, the function we just created, plus button is info, so it's blue, v if not invoice.is paid, so we only show this if the invoice hasn't been paid yet. Send reminder, close the button and save. So now we can go back here, find an invoice which isn't paid, click send reminder. Now we get the reminder was sent, and if I go back here now, make this a little bit bigger. This is the PDF, and you can see here multi-part, similar, from, the subject, who it's going to, and then a little bit of the content, like that. And you have an attachment, invoice1.pdf, and this is the one we should be able to download if it was sent to an actual email. Perfect. So then the reminders is also done. So we can save that. And then the last task for this part is to create a very simple dashboard. On the dashboard I want to show the unpaid invoices and the newest clients. So if I find dashboard.view, now we just have a very boring dashboard which has the title dashboard. The first column I want to add is the unpaid invoices. So we have the new column is 6, add box inside, so we get a little shadow around it with a simple subtitle unpaid invoices. And then we have a very simple table as we had inside the client, where we just loop through unpaid invoices, show the number, client name, gross amount, the date, and the possibility to go to the detail page. And this takes up half of the screen, and on the other side I want to show the clients. So here we have another column 6, div class box, and subtitle newest clients. Here we just loop through the clients, set the key to client.id. Then we have a simple box inside there again with the client name and the possibility to see the detail page of a client. But if I save now and go here, you won't see much because we haven't got the data from the database yet, or the backend. So here I need to import Axios, import Axios from Axios, and then I can create a new data array, return, invoices, which should be a list, and also clients, which is also a list. And when this page is mounted, I want to call this.getInvoices and this.getClients. Then we can create those two methods, getInvoices and getClients. So now things shouldn't crash at least, but we still don't see anything here, but that's okay. And I can go back to client.view because I want to copy the unpaid invoices function from there. Just paste it at the end, but instead of saying this.client.invoices, we just said this.invoices. Great. Next we need to call Axios to get the invoices from the backend. So Axios get, and then the list of invoices, and we have this response. I think we can just say this.invoices equals response.data, save. So then we have the unpaid invoices here, perfect. And if I go back here, we need to do the same with the clients. So this says the API/v1 clients, and then we loop through the data we get. And if the clients list here in view is less or equal to 5, we push it, because we only want to show 5 of the newest clients. So if I go back here now, you'll see the list of the newest clients here. Perfect. The problem here now is that I think we also get the credit notes, and those shouldn't be here as unpaid. So I can actually loop through these here by saying for let I equals 0, I is less than response.data.length, I plus if response.data, so check if the field is credit for. Great, so we change this to loop through this and check if the is credited for is filled out, and if it's not, by using this, we push this data to the list of invoices. So when we go back here now, we only have these two, which is the unpaid invoices. Perfect. And I also think this needs to be fixed on the invoice page here, because if I go here now, go to this one, which is a credit note, you see this button, and this should not be there on a credit note. So here I say, and then not invoice.is credit for. So now we don't see it there, but if I go back here, you see this. Perfect. So that was it. So now we can set this task as well to done. Now we have a very simple dashboard. Perfect. We have now built a simple MVP for this project, and we are ready to deploy it, which I will do in the next part. I'll probably make a few update videos later for this series, but for now this is the last part with the coding. So stay tuned and wait for the next part where we are going to deploy this project to a live server. See you next time.